We've got some Buffalo Bills news to dig into and 2 segments of herd mentality coming your way today on Locked On Bills.
You are Locked On Bills, your daily Buffalo Bills podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, Bills Mafia? It's Joe Marino from the Draft Network, and I'm your host of Locked On Bills. Happy Monday to you, and thank you for making Locked On Bills your first listen every day. And as a reminder to you, we are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. Today's episode of Locked On Bills is presented to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is daily fantasy made easy. You pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on your entry. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That's prizepicks.com, promo code Locked On. Well, folks, I hope you had a great Thanksgiving weekend celebrating the Bills' win over the Lions, and hopefully you got to spend some great time with family. I certainly did. My wife and I, we took our daughter to the mountains here in North Carolina, and we cut down a Christmas tree, and we went to a town outside of Boone called Blowing Rock, and had a great weekend, decorated the house, and obviously set up the Christmas tree and all that. What was kind of cool is I was in Blowing Rock, North Carolina, and I could not believe the amount of Bills fans that were up there. And there's a lot of seeing people with Bills hats on or Bills jackets on, and just a quick go Bills. And you know, it was really, really cool. It's awesome to see seemingly anywhere I go, Bills Mafia is there. And so hopefully that's the same for you as well if you live outside of Western New York. But we got a lot to talk about here on the podcast. Some big news has come through since the last time that we spoke. And then I have some really good herd mentality questions that were sent in, a lot of stuff that covers some contingencies if Von Miller is out for an extended period of time, some thoughts on the offense and those types of things. So let's get into it. I want to start by reflecting on some of the information that we learned from practice on Sunday. The Bills are playing on Thursday this week, and so they were off on Friday, and then Saturday was like a Tuesday, and so Sunday was like a Wednesday, right? So it's a really weird week to reflect upon, but we got some good news and we got some bad news when it comes to practice. The good news is that Greg Rousseau, Mitch Morse, and Tremaine Edmonds all returned to practice on Sunday. And look, there's a big stretch of games coming up here. 3 straight AFC East games. The next one against the Patriots, then you get the Jets and the Dolphins here. So you got some big-time matchups coming up. And so you're going to need to have all hands on deck here in this defining stretch of the season. And so getting those players back, at least in practice, is a good step in the direction of them playing on Thursday night. Now, on the bad news side of things, Deion Dawkins and A.J. Epinesa did not practice. And so that obviously puts into jeopardy their status for Thursday. Hopefully they progress and are able to go, but we'll see. Now, the Bills also had several players that didn't practice on Sunday due to an illness. Those players are Saran Neal, Jordan Poyer, Dane Jackson, Tyler Medikevich, Nyheim Hines, Jaquan Johnson, Khalil Shakir, and Quentin Morris. Not great, right? Those are all players that are active on game days and have roles for this football team. And so hopefully that is more precautionary. They're going to be ready to practice as soon as today or tomorrow, and we'll be fine for Thursday. But thought that was something at least worth noting. Also, the team opened Ike Bucker's 21-day window to practice and be activated to the roster. And so that's exciting news. He's coming off of an Achilles injury last year, and maybe there's a chance he comes back and can help the team. At a minimum, provide some depth. Josh Allen has spoken very highly of Ike Bucker. He could play center. He could play guard. Has started some meaningful games for this football team. And so if he can come back and, represent some type of an upgrade, that'd be awesome. And it'd be great for him to get a little time with Coach Cromer, because as we peak towards the 2023 season, the Bills are likely to have a new starter at least at left guard. Maybe that's like Bucker. So it'd be nice for him to have some time with Coach Cromer and this group, this offense, right? Ken Dorsey, the OC, all that stuff coming together to see if you feel like this can be a potential answer for you next season. Now, the Bills also made several transactions. So let's work through these. Xavier Rhodes is no longer on the practice squad. He is on the active roster. Now, the corresponding move there is Christian Benford is now on injured reserve with an oblique injury, and he's going to miss at least 4 games. And so there's been obviously a lot of promise with Christian Benford, but he's injured again this year. He broke his hand earlier. Now he's got the oblique injury, and Xavier Rhodes, a veteran player who's gotten some run here in recent weeks, he's on the active roster. And so now your options at outside corner include Tre'Davious White, who played 2 series against the Lions, and it sounds like the Bills have a plan to kind of ramp him up every week. So I don't know if he'll play 3 series or if he gets 25 snaps. I don't know what the plan is, but it would appear that he'll get a little bit more every week. So you have that. You have Kyer Elam, who Leslie Frazier came out and said there was some residual pain that he was dealing with in his ankle, but he did play some against the Lions. Hopefully he's ready to go in full this week. You've got Dane Jackson, who's obviously in a big-time slump. And, of course, now Xavier Rhodes as your outside cornerback options. You certainly have the Cam Lewises and the Saron Neals of the world, but in reality, those are your 4 outside corners right now. Now, the corresponding move for Xavier Rhodes being placed on the active roster is CJ Brewer was added to the practice squad, in addition to a very, very familiar name, wide receiver John Brown. Smoke, he's back. And so the list of guys that came back this year is growing. Matt Barkley, Shaq Lawson, Jordan Phillips, AJ Klein. All these guys, Dean Marlowe, right? A lot of guys that left have now come back, and you can add John Brown to that list. And so the Bills needed to do something at receiver. Now, I know that Marquez Stevenson, he's in that 21-day window, just like Ike Bucker, so he could come back here at some point. But the Bills only have had 4 wide receivers on the roster for the last couple of games. Stephon Diggs, Gabriel Davis, Isaiah McKenzie, and Khalil Shakir. I mean, they've called up Tanner Gentry the last couple of weeks, and he's had to play a couple snaps. So I think what you have here is an insurance policy, right? Because you can't afford an injury at receiver. John Brown obviously is familiar with Josh Allen. He's familiar with a lot of the guys on the offense. He's been in the building with Ken Dorsey, and obviously he knows Chad Hall. That's how he got back on the team, as he was staying in contact with everybody, and he's been sending Chad Hall workout videos. He came in and signed to the practice squad. But I think where this conversation really gets interesting, and this is going to lead us into some of the herd mentality questions, but what does this mean for the Odell Beckham Jr. sweepstakes? And, we've heard a lot about the Dallas Cowboys in the mix. The Bills are in the mix. The Ravens, the Chiefs. There's teams that are in the mix here, one of them being the Bills. And obviously there was the report that came through on Sunday afternoon about a really strange situation with Odell in an airplane. And, you could read into that. I don't certainly have all the details, but it was somewhat concerning. But the question that I want to answer here comes from a herd mentality submission from Jock Doc, and this is what Jock Doc says. He said the fan base might not agree, but from an orthopedic surgeon's perspective, a healthy John Brown may be a better move than an OBJ signing just 8 months after his second ACL repair. And we've known, or if you've listened to me talk about the proposition of adding Odell Beckham Jr., I've admitted to you that I'm very curious. I somewhat want it to happen. I understand that he can help this football team, but I've also always said it comes with a dose of reality about what a player like Odell Beckham Jr. can really mean for the 2022 Bills. considering that he is coming off of an ACL injury, right? And we saw how the Bills handled Trey White's ACL recovery. It takes time, and they're not going to rush anything. And now you're onboarding a player that you're expecting to be a meaningful weapon for your offense, who's never been part of your offense. That's never taken a rep with Josh Allen. That's never taken a rep with Ken Dorsey. That's never played or had anything to do with this offense. And you're expecting him in December to come in and help put you over the hump. Now take a second and ask yourself the question. Are those dynamics that exist with Odell Beckham Jr., is that actually better than John Brown, who has had a 1,000-yard season catching footballs from Josh Allen? That knows the players, that knows Ken Dorsey, that knows Chad Hall. Which one could actually make a more meaningful impact this year? I'm not debating that Odell Beckham Jr. is a better player than John Brown. But everything that concerned you about Odell Beckham is not a concern with John Brown. Now, you could certainly say, well, since John Brown left the Bills, he's bounced around practice squad and hasn't made an impact anywhere. All right, that's true. But how many times have we seen guys be the best version of themselves in Buffalo? It's happened quite often, and we've now seen Shaq Lawson and Jordan Phillips come back after they weren't impact players for the teams that they went to, and they are here. So, look, I'm not going to predict that John Brown's arrival means no OBJ. I'm not going to predict that John Brown's arrival is going to make us forget about some of the shortcomings of this wide receiver core. But at this point in the season, under these circumstances, it's a pretty doggone good idea to get a player that has this level of familiarity and has had success with these players and on this football team relatively recently. Josh Allen and John Brown don't have to spend weeks or extra practice reps figuring each other out. They've thrown a lot of footballs together. And so I have a level of excitement about John Brown being back and him potentially getting on this roster and really providing this receiving core with something that they currently don't have, that I think a lot of people were romanticizing and hoping could be found in Odell Beckham Jr. And maybe you have both. I don't know. But this John Brown move, I think, is a good one. This episode is brought to you by Audible. Audible is releasing a slate of new football podcasts that you are going to love. You can find Block Forever now wherever you get your podcasts. Block Forever is a brand new podcast from former NFL All-Pro Ryan Khalil and Audible. Khalil takes the conversation about football to the next level. He gives football fans an insider's look at the game through the eyes of the greatest players and personalities of all time. And new episodes of Block Forever will be recorded and released every week ahead of Thursday Night Football. It is available for free on Audible or wherever you get your podcasts. Catch the full Block Forever series available anywhere you get your podcast, available everywhere now. Audible, get in the game. All right, let's talk about some of these herd mentality submissions that were sent in. Got some good stuff to dig into. Let's get started. The next one comes from Steven. Steven says, can you comment on our route running? It feels like so many teams are able to get guys wide open except for us. Is this just a result of our talent or Dorsey? I got to tell you, I got this question or some version of this question from a lot of people. I think a lot of people have been watching football lately and wondering why other teams have guys running wide open. And it feels like the Bills have to make a challenging throw and catch every time they complete a pass. So let's talk about route running and scheme and design a little bit here. Now, the first question that you asked was just to comment about the route running. I think Stephon Diggs is probably a top 5 route runner in the NFL. Maybe top 3. He's exceptional. He's elite. He's phenomenal at running routes and getting open. But that might be it for this Bills wide receiver core. I don't think you've ever heard me compliment the route running ability of a Gabriel Davis or an Isaiah McKenzie. In fact, I've said quite the opposite, where they have route running limitations. They've received no flowers from me ever for the route running. I don't think they're bad route runners, but it's certainly not the strength of their game. So that's your number 2 and your number 3 receiver. So, yeah, I don't think the Bills have a collection of great route runners. When they had Diggs, Brown, Sanders, Beasley, those guys, yeah, they did. Those are good route runners. I wouldn't say the same for Gabriel Davis and Isaiah McKenzie. So, yeah, first of all, I don't think the Bills have this collection of outstanding route runners outside of Stephon Diggs like they have in the past. As for the scheme, one thing that I think maybe works against them a little bit when it comes to this idea that guys can be wide open all the time is the Bills give their wide receivers a lot of freedom with how they run routes and how they get into route breaks and the timing and the tempo and the spacing. And sometimes the spacing is really bad. Sometimes the spacing of routes for the Bills offense is really bad. And I think that is the give and take that exists when you give your receivers so much freedom to get open and catch the ball. There's some option routes in there. There's some sight adjustments, reading coverage and adjusting on the fly. And so I think when it's less scripted and requires some thinking and adjustments, sometimes your spacing can be impacted, which reduces your ability to really get guys free, if you will. Now, the other side of that is you give those guys that freedom and you trust Josh Allen to find good matchups and throw them the football, right? That's a lot of what the Bills ask him to do. And Josh Allen's great at that. When he goes empty and he's trying to find a matchup that he likes and a guy gets open, he can get him the ball. But there's some give and take with how the Bills play offense. The next thing that I'll say about this is I would love to see a 10% increase in play action from this Bills offense. Right now, they're about 25, 26%. I'd love to see that in the mid-30s. That'd be fine by me. I think if you do that, you'll get even more guys, quote-unquote, wide open. So hopefully that gave everyone some perspective. Let's kind of continue some of that discussion with Adam here. Adam has a very simple question. How's yards after catch going this season? We talked about this a lot before the season. We talked a little bit about it earlier in the season. The Bills got to about midway, right? Josh Allen was about 5.5 yards after catch per reception, middle of the pack. Well, the last few weeks have not been good for yards after catch. It's actually been very poor. So Josh Allen is back down to 4.7 yards after catch per reception, 23rd in the NFL. And they were at 4.2 yards after catch per reception last year. So they're only about a half a yard better so far this year. So let me give you some data on the players that are contributing most to these numbers. And so for the players on the team that have at least 30 catches, keeping in mind that's Diggs, Knox, Davis, Singletary, McKenzie. All of them have at least 30 catches. Nobody else has more than 9. So these are the players that are really factoring into that number. Stephon Diggs, 4.1. And I think everyone should be over 5. Mid-5s is where I really want these players. Stephon Diggs, 4.1. Dawson Knox, 4. Gabe Davis, 3.8. Devin Singletary, 7. Isaiah McKenzie, 3.2. It's not good enough. Those numbers aren't good enough. And so what does it go back to? The same stuff we've been talking about for the last 3 years. Ball placement, the types of routes that they run, and yards after catch skill. For a guy like Isaiah McKenzie, that number needs to be higher. The guys that are catching all your footballs, Diggs and Davis, they're both 4.1 for Diggs, 3.8 for Davis. It's not a great part of what they do. And I think that stylistically, the Bills' offense has shifted a bit in recent weeks. And certainly, look, it's not all bad, man. This is still a top 2 offense in the NFL, right? We've been through this. Go back and listen to my rant at the beginning of the Victory Friday podcast. There's a lot of context here. The Bills really haven't even practiced in like the last 3 weeks. So yeah, surely it's not all going to be everything you want it to be with a quarterback that's playing hurt, that's trying to regain some confidence. You know, there's some things going on here. They only have 4 healthy receivers. So there's some dynamics to consider here. But yeah, I find myself once again wishing that there was more yards after catch. And I think when the Bills offense was at its best this year, that was part of what was happening. The next one comes from Luke. Luke says, with Von Miller potentially missing significant time and defensive end also up in the air with Rousseau and Epenesa's injuries, what options do the Bills have? Could we see someone like Jordan Phillips kick outside a bit? And I also got a question about Ed Oliver kicking outside a bit. Let's first of all kind of catch up on Von Miller. Sounds like they avoided an ACL tear, which is good news, but there's some meniscus issues. They're giving it another 7 to 10 days to evaluate, and they'll make a decision from there. And so we don't know if in 7 to 10 days if it's going to be a procedure that's going to keep him out or if he's going to play with a brace. I think it's all on the table. But as for the options that the Bills have, I think it's going to be Shaq Lawson, Greg Rousseau, Boogie Basham, AJ Epinesa, and Mike Love. I think that's the players they're going to lean on. And what kind of sucks about that is that's not overly exciting, but it is 2 first-round picks and 2 second-round picks, right? Rousseau and Lawson were first-rounders. Basham and Epinesa were second-rounders. You'd like to feel like this is enough talent. And so I think it goes back to Eric Washington and Leslie Frazier to figure out how you can get the most out of these players without Von Miller on the field. But when you talk about some of these defensive tackles, whether that's Ed Oliver or Jordan Phillips, let's start with Ed Oliver. Ed Oliver doesn't have the arm length to play on the edge. He's got sub 32-inch arms, 31 3/4. He's got really, really short arms. And you're playing out on the edge, and you're asking him to soften rush angles and win around the near hip of an offensive tackle that's got 34, 35-inch arms. It's not putting him in a situation to succeed. Can he situationally do it? Yes. But as a defensive end, the best pass rushers are able to win inside and win outside. And how on earth can you possibly ask a guy that has sub 32-inch arms to consistently win around the near hip of an offensive tackle? That makes it real easy on me. If I'm playing tackle and I'm going against Ed Oliver, you're going to have to beat me outside because I'm taking away the B gap. You're not getting there. And now you're going to have to use your length and modest frame and modest speed in terms of a true pure edge rusher. Ain't going to work. Jordan Phillips, I like the idea of him kind of bull rushing and collapsing the width of the pocket, but he doesn't have the flexibility needed to win around the near hip either. And so you have a very predictable player to deal with if you're an offensive tackle. And so I don't really see that as a viable plan. I think it's going to be Lawson, Rousseau, Basham, Epinesa, and Mike Love. This episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. I hope you've been getting in on the action over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is my favorite daily fantasy resource. How does it work? You pick 2 to 5 players, and if they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on your entries. There's no competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections available. They have every sport you can imagine, and entries can be made in 60 seconds or less. It is that easy. So download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. So if you deposit 100, Prize Picks will give you 100. If you deposit 50, Prize Picks will give you 50. Just don't forget to enter our promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. Bills Mafia, I want you to join me for a moment of meditation brought to you by Zach's Mighty Tortilla Chips. Close your eyes and picture yourself in front of your football Sunday snack spread. Do you see a chip and dip bowl? Now picture the wildest dip of your dreams, getting all the layers of a 7-layer dip in one scoop, or that huge avocado chunk in your guacamole. Now open your eyes and head right to Wegmans, because those dreams can become a reality with Zach's Mighty Tortilla Chips. They make the most delicious chips that are literally made to dip. And the corn that they use is grown right here in upstate New York. So let today be the day you stop dreaming and start living. My wife and I, we love these chips. We have them all the time. We love dips over here at the Marino household. And we always have our Zach's Mighty tortilla chips on hand because they are sturdy, they're crunchy, they're perfectly seasoned, and they taste great. And of course, we never have to worry about them breaking in half when we're trying to dunk a scoop of buffalo chicken dip onto our chip. You can find Zach's Mighty tortilla chips at all Wegmans locations in the chip aisle. Zach's Mighty, take the dip of your dreams. All right, we got a few more to get to here today. The next one comes from Patrick. Patrick says, love the recent wins, but can't help but think the play of our offensive line was a major contributor to the Bills' offensive woes. I know you discussed Spencer Brown's up and down play, but it appears that he is not the only culprit on the line. Is this something that can be fixed given the offensive lineman currently on the team? Well, I mean, especially most recently, Spencer Brown's been inconsistent at right tackle. You just didn't have your left tackle, Deion Dawkins, a Pro Bowler for half the game against Detroit. You're without Mitch Morse, you're steady center. Ryan Bates kicks over. He didn't have a great game at center. Greg Van Roten's a backup playing there at right guard. Roger Saffold's been kind of underwhelming this year. So I think some of that is circumstances right now with injuries, but also I think if you go left to right, I think Dawkins has been playing at a level I'd expect him to. Roger Saffold has not been an above average player. I think he's been kind of a disappointment. Mitch Morse, I think, has been excellent. Ryan Bates has been okay. And Spencer Brown has been up and down. I do feel confident that the Bills are playing their 5 best offensive linemen. And maybe Ike Bacher can come in and shake that up a little bit. But you're paying those first 4. You're paying them all except for the right tackle starter money. So you'd be disappointed. If Ike Bacher comes in and takes Saffold or Bates out of the lineup, that'd be pretty disappointing. Maybe Bates goes to right tackle. Maybe that's the plan. I don't know. But I feel like based on who's healthy right now, they got the best 5 they can put out there. But I think it's fair to say that Brown, Saffold, and even Bates to a disappointment even Bates to an extent have been disappointments this year. But Morse and Dawkins have been perfectly fine. Jeremy says, considering the Bills' recent struggles and their successes on scoring drives at the end of each half in 2-minute drills, would you recommend the Bills transition to more of a no-huddle offense? I think that the Bills should be willing to consider that at times. I think you can go a little bit of tempo at times, catch teams in defensive personnel groupings that you like, and really kind of push the action. And maybe that's something that they'll unleash here down the stretch, because I think that it could be a very good thing for the Bills. Just kind of let Josh Allen take control and take advantage of some pace. I'm not against that at all. Now, look, you have to, if you do this type of thing, then you need to get first downs. You can't be going 3 and out and putting your defense right back on the field. But I think there's probably some times where they can pick and choose some good opportunities to tap into some tempo stuff and keep defenses on their heels. So yeah, I'd be willing to try that. Bill says, is the success on 3rd and long and 4th down against our defense recently due to our injuries, or because teams have figured out the rules of our zone defense and know where to target? Also, last 2 drives, Josh looked like week 1, 2, and 6, Josh. What changed? Looked like there was a lot more velocity on his throws, and it almost felt inevitable once he got into rhythm. Thoughts on how he was just able to turn that on and where it's been these last few weeks? Do you think he just said, F it to the pain and started slinging it like we know he can to win the game? All right, so 2 good things to talk about here. First, let's get into the 3rd and longs, because this has been frustrating, I think, for everybody. The Bills are bad on 3rd and long, which is crazy, right? I'm not sure it's as simple as there's just one thing I could tell you. It's like, okay, this is the one thing that's wrong with their 3rd and long defense. I think it's a factor. I think it's all of this stuff kind of coming together is why. I don't think the Bills are great at rushing the passer. I don't think they tackle well. They have injuries in the back 7, and their DBs don't win the ball in the air. So on any given play, 1, 2, 3, 4 of those things could show up. And I think because I'll go through the inventory again. They don't rush the passer well. They don't tackle well. They have injuries all over the back 7, and their DBs don't win the ball in the air. It's going to make for a high variance defense, right? I think you're seeing that. As for Josh Allen, yeah, look, he's got a hurt elbow. We all have. We've watched Josh Allen play football his entire career. And when you contrast it to the last 2 games, it's very, very obvious that this man has an injured elbow. All right? He's not himself. And so I'm sure that there are moments where he does say, all right, it's time to rip one. It's time to just let it loose. And at times he's done that. But for the most part, this is not your typical Josh Allen. It's because he's got a hurt elbow. And that came right on the heels of having some turnover issues. And so he's got some confidence concerns. He's playing hurt. I think it's that simple, right? I don't think there's any magical formula here. I think it's that he has to pick his spots where he can really tap into his typical arm strength and dial up a heater. I think that's what it comes down to. But I mean, since the elbow injury, the Bills are 2-1. Probably should be 3-0. Not probably. They absolutely should be 3-0. Josh Allen 1,000,000% gives his team the best opportunity to win, and hopefully he just kind of keeps getting better and better. And after this Patriots game on Thursday, Bills have a little mini bye there, right? A little rest before playing on the following Sunday. Hopefully, we start to see Josh as we know him very, very soon. Going to need it with these division games coming up. All right, folks. So another weird week on the podcast. I was glad we were able to get herd mentality in today. I hate missing that. Tomorrow is going to be our comprehensive primer on the Patriots, our first time playing the Patriots this year. So we'll break them down. They're coming off of an impressive performance against the Vikings that ended in a loss. So a lot to dig into with the Patriots. I'll get you ready for that tomorrow. Wednesday is going to feel a lot like a typical Friday episode where I'll do my 5 predictions. We'll talk to Dr. Kyle Trimble. I'll give you my leftover thoughts. And then Thursday will be the crossover preview with Mike Debate of Locked On Patriots. But I'm going to release that on Wednesday evening as quickly as I can because I know that there's a small strike zone to consume that before the Bills play on Thursday night. And, of course, Friday will be our game reaction podcast. So a lot going on here this week. Don't miss anything. Make sure that you're subscribed. Would love it if you took a second to rate, review, and share the podcast. Have a great rest of your day, and I look forward to catching up with you again tomorrow.